If you're like me and have been watching Derrick Henry for the past 2 years, and especially based on the way he plays against Baltimore, you probably expected him to perform at his best in the wildcard weekend. Nope. We were wrong on that one for sure, and it got me wondering what really happened to him. Was it Baltimore defense? Did he just have an off game? I'm sure a lot of different factors played into it, and to get a better understanding of what might have happened, I compared his game to last year's playoff game and regular season game this season as well. So let's take a look at the game from last weekend first. He had 40 yards on 18 attempts. That's bad. And not just in Derrick Henry standard, but this would be a bad game just for about anybody. Now let's look at his game from last year's playoff against Baltimore. He rushed for 195 yards on 30 attempts. He was clearly dominant just by looking at his number, and I'm sure if you saw the game, he looked like a man amongst boys out there and felt like no one could bring him down that day. But if you take out the top 3 runs he had in that game, you get 79 yards on 27 attempts, which comes down to just 2.9 yards per attempt. It's still better than the game he had this year, but this number shows he was struggling for the most part in that game as well. Now let's look at this year's regular season game against Baltimore. He rushed for 133 yards on 27 attempts. He technically had 28 attempts for this game, but one of them was from fumble recovery, so I took that one out to have a better comparison. Even though it wasn't as good as last year's playoff game, it was still a really good game, and he literally won the game by scoring a 29-yard touchdown in overtime. But if you look at his stats before the fourth quarter, he only had 44 yards on 17 attempts. So up to that point, it looks just as bad as last weekend's game. So let's take a look at what happened after fourth quarter started in that game. He ran for 89 yards on 10 attempts, and even if you take out the big runs out of it, he had 36 yards on 8 attempts, which gives him 4.5 yards on average. So he was way more consistent and produced big plays down the stretch. So after calculating all the numbers and comparing the games, my theory on why he didn't perform as well is simply because he didn't get enough carries. More carries mean more chance at big runs, and more importantly, opposing defenses wear down and eventually get tired the more you run, which explains why he was able to have such a big fourth quarter in that regular season game. I didn't really mention it earlier, but even in the last year's playoff game, he had a much better second half than the first one. So with that in mind, let's take a look at a couple of plays. First play we're going to look at is the best run he had from the last year's playoff. As you can see here, first contact happens near the line of scrimmage. It wasn't really a strong attempt at tackling him, as Henry just runs past it, and I think this shows some sign of fatigue from the defense. And second attempt at tackling him was even weaker, and all he had to do was stiff arm him just a little, and he ended up running for 66 yards on this one. Next play I'm going to show you is from last weekend's game. This is his third to last carry of the game, and I don't think it was a coincidence that he had the longest run on this one. I think the defense was starting to show fatigue as they were getting pushed back, and the main difference from this run to last play is that defense had more energy to give a strong tackle, or he was probably going to get a big play out of this one as well. I really think if the Titans ran the ball more, the defense would be more worn out by this point, and Henry would have had a much better game as a result. Hopefully you guys enjoyed my explanation for why Derrick Henry struggled so much last weekend. And I'm not really a football genius or anything like that, and I'm sure you guys have different ideas on why he struggled. So please comment if you do, because I would love to hear different ideas about this. Thank you guys so much for watching. Please like and subscribe if you liked the video, and I'll see you guys next time.